Well, good morning, everyone. It is a beautiful day here in South Florida, Broward County. On behalf of the Urban League of Broward County, it is my absolute pleasure to welcome each of you to Mobilizing the Movement, cultivating a culture of civic impact. My name is Dr. Jermaine Smith-Baugh, and I have the pleasure of serving as the president and CEO for your Urban League of Broward County. Thank you for choosing to spend your time with us this morning. Whether you're joining us as a community member, nonprofit leader, educator, advocate, business professional, elected official, student, or an engaged resident, your presence here signals something important, a belief that our voices matter and that our collective action can shape the future of our communities. Here at the Urban League of Broward County, our mission has always centered on advancing social and economic equity and empowering communities to thrive. We know that economic mobility and civic participation are deeply connected. Access to quality education, housing, employment, healthcare, and entrepreneurship does not just happen by chance. It happens when communities are informed, engaged, organized, and represented. And that is why this conversation today matters the most. And perhaps now more than ever, across the nation, we are witnessing profound changes in how communities engage with government, institutions, workplaces, and with each other. We are seeing new conversations emerge around voting rights, civic participation, public policy, and community voice. Because civic engagement is not simply about participation, it is about power, representation, and ensuring that every community has the opportunity to influence the decisions that impact their daily lives. Civic engagement is not simply about casting a ballot every election cycle, which I hope you do. Civic engagement is about understanding the systems that shape our daily lives. It is about advocating for the resources our neighborhoods deserve. It is about serving on boards It's about volunteering and mentoring young people, attending community meetings, supporting local businesses, as well as ensuring that every resident understands that they both have a voice and a power to use every single time. For underserved and historically marginalized communities, civic engagement carries even greater significance. Because when communities have historically been excluded from decision making spaces, disengagement is not simply a matter of apathy. It is often the result of barriers, inequity, and generations of underrepresentation. And we know the data. Communities facing economic hardship often experience disparities in healthcare access, educational opportunity, housing stability, environmental conditions, and economic advancement. Too often, the communities most impacted by policy decisions have the least representation in the rooms where those decisions are being made. But history also teaches us something equally as powerful. Progress has always been driven by ordinary people doing extraordinary things. The right to vote, fair housing protections, civil rights legislations, educational access, economic opportunity, just to name a few. But none of these advances happened accidentally. They happened because individuals just like you and communities organized just like us advocated and demanded change. And that legacy calls us today to action. The future of civic engagement is not just at the ballot box, it is in our workplaces, our schools, our neighborhoods, our faith institutions, and also in our homes. It is the conversations that we're having with our families, the conversations that we're having with our children. It is the leaders that we cultivate. It is in the young people that we choose to inspire. And it is in the choices that we make every day to participate in shaping our collective future. That is precisely why we have gathered here this morning. This conference virtually was intended intentionally to explore civic engagement not only as an act of voting, but as a culture, one that could be cultivated within organizations, workplaces, as well as our communities. Throughout today's program, you will hear from phenomenal leaders, a lineup of experts, practitioners, advocates, and thought leaders who bring deep experience and valuable perspective to these conversations. Our speakers will examine what civic participation looks like in today's world and how, as individuals and institutions, we can foster greater engagement, strengthen democracy, and build more resilient neighborhoods and organizations. They will challenge us to think differently. They will inspire us to act intentionally. And they will provide practical tools and strategies that we can take back to our organizations, our neighborhoods, and to our families. Because knowledge is not enough. Knowledge must lead to action. I'll say that one more time. Knowledge alone is not enough. Knowledge must lead us to action. And action is what mobilizes movements. We are also especially honored to have our Supervisor of Elections, Mr. Joe Scott, joining us today. His office's participation is critically important because informed voters are empowered voters. You will receive updates on important election information, available resources, voting processes, and everything you need to know in order to ensure that your voice is heard at the ballot box. In a time when information can definitely be overwhelming, to say the very least, or even sometimes confusing, having direct access to trusted election officials to help strengthen transparency, confidence, and participation in our democratic process is an absolute must. Our democracy functions best when every eligible voter understands not only their rights, but also the resources that are available to them to exercise those rights fully. Today is an opportunity to learn, to ask questions, become even more informed participants in this civic process and in our civic life. Events like this doesn't just happen. We are deeply grateful to our partners whose investments reflect a shared commitment to community engagement and civic empowerment. We extend our sincere appreciation to the Ventus Charitable Foundation for its generous support of this conference and for recognizing the importance of creating spaces where residents can learn, residents can engage, and most importantly, residents can lead. We also wish to thank our longtime government relations partner and community advocate, Yolanda Cash Jackson, and her team from Becker for their enduring partnership and commitment to strengthening communities through civic dialogue and public engagement. Partnerships like these remind us that advancing equity and civic participation is a shared responsibility. When philanthropy, business, government, and community organizations, as well as you, begin working together, meaningful change becomes absolutely possible. As we continue throughout today's session, I encourage you to be fully present, to ask questions, to challenge your assumptions, to exchange ideas, and build relationships. Because movements are built not in isolation. Movements are built through connection with each other. And communities become stronger when people come together with a shared purpose and a vision for the future. So before I close, I would like to extend one additional invitation. We hope that you will be able to join us here at the Urban League of Broward County at our headquarters on tomorrow, Wednesday, June 17th at 6:30 p.m. sharp for our Congressional District 20 Candidate Forum. This is an important opportunity to hear directly from the candidates who are seeking to represent our community both locally and in Washington, D.C. We encourage residents to listen, to learn, to ask questions, and engage thoughtfully in this democratic process. Because civic participation does not begin and end on Election Day. It begins with being informed. Thank you again for being with us here today. Thank you for investing in your community. Thank you for believing that every voice matters. And together, let us cultivate a culture of civic impact and engagement. And together, let us mobilize the movement. And together, let us build a future where every community has the opportunity not only to be heard, but to thrive. So welcome to this year's conference and enjoy today's program. We will be back in a few minutes. Good morning. Welcome back. I want to thank you once again for joining us for this important community conversation. Our democracy works best when citizens are informed, engaged, and empowered to participate. And that's you. Elections affect every aspect of our lives, from our schools and our neighborhoods to public safety, transportation, economic empowerment, and opportunity. Yet, so many voters still have questions about registration requirements, voting options, polling locations, and many of the recent changes to our Florida election laws. So, here we go. Today's discussion is designed to provide clear information directly from the source. Whether you're a first time voter, a long-time resident, or someone who simply wants to better understand the voting process so that you might be able to share it with others, we hope you leave feeling more informed and confident about participating in this upcoming and all future elections. Thank you for being here and for taking an active role in our community. Welcome to Cultivating a Culture of Civic Impact. Today, we'll explore how organizations can engage employees and communities through voting initiatives, volunteerism, thoughtful communication, and partnerships, all while building trust and driving measurable impact. So, to help me today, it would only make a lot of sense for us to invite the person who will know the most about all of these topics. So, it is my absolute pleasure today to welcome Broward County Supervisor of Elections, Mr. Joe Scott. Hey,
Hi,
Joe, how you doing?
good morning, Dr. Bob. Such a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, let me just tell the folks a little bit about you. So, in his role, Supervisor Scott oversees the administration of elections throughout Broward County, including voter registration, election security, vote by mail services, polling locations, election worker recruitment, voter education, and ensuring that elections are conducted fairly, accurately, and transparently. I got tired just saying all those things. But today, we'll discuss recent election law changes, important deadlines, voter resources that are available, election security, and how our residents can make sure that their voices are heard at the ballot. So once again, let's all just give a virtual clap for Mr. Joe Scott, our supervisor of elections. So Joe, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Good. Can't complain. So we got 30 minutes to dig into a topic that is clearly taking up a lot of space for all of us, but it takes up all your space every day because you were elected by us to serve as our supervisor of elections and doing a phenomenal job. So just really want to thank you for that. So, first question. Last 8 years, we've definitely had a lot of changes to Florida election laws,
Yes.
lots to keep up with. What are some of the important changes you think that Broward County voters should know about today?
So probably the most important one would be that everybody has to sign up for vote by mail each election cycle, which
Mhm.
is a 2-year period starting in January of an odd numbered year, ending in December of an even numbered year. So just because you got a ballot by mail back in 2024 does not mean that you're going to get one this time around, and that's a change from how it was a few years ago. So, so it's still a process of getting the word out, but I would say that's probably the biggest thing, for people to know, and that they definitely should request that vote by mail ballot. It's an important thing to do, even if you plan to vote in person.
Let's talk a little bit about that because recently I was in a small group meeting, and folks are used to is keeping on with the vote by mail question. People are used to I registered for vote by mail. I expected to show up. It didn't show up. How can they make sure to check that if they have done the process correctly or not? How do they either check that they are appropriately getting registered for vote by mail, and if they want to, how do they request it?
Yeah, so we actually have a space on our website at browardvotes.gov where you can actually check your status. You can look up everything from your address, what your polling place is, including things like have you requested a vote by mail ballot and for which elections are you expected to get a vote by mail ballot. So it's actually all posted online for people to see. They just need their first name, last name, and date of birth to access their information,
Hmm.
and then they'll be able to see it. Um, other than that, we're actually doing status notifications now. So
Oh.
there's a place on our website for people to sign up. If you give us your email address, your cell phone number, we send text messages, we send emails, and of course, we still do regular mail as well. But we will use every means available to get in contact with you when there's something you need to know. For
Hmm.
example, we'll let everybody know that their ballots on the way when we mail out the vote by mail ballots. We'll actually notify you that it's coming. We'll even possibly send reminders that say, "Hey, it's time to send it back," or the deadline is approaching, and things like that, so that people can stay aware. So if you sign up for those status notifications, we don't spam you. We don't send too many. We try to keep it only the most critical communications that are necessary for people. But if you give us that information, then we will contact you and let you know what's going on.
Very good. So, one of the takeaways from what you just shared is that when we get information that has Broward County Supervisor of Elections or Broward County Elections Office, we should read the mail.
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, very good, very good. And I know also too a lot of our elders, right, are use vote by mail. So I really want to encourage those of us who have elders in our lives that we're listening to what Supervisor Scott just shared and check on behalf of the individuals that are in your home. Does that make sense, Supervisor Scott?
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, that's part of the reason that vote by mail is such a great tool for families in particular, is that it's you can't really go into a polling place and chat about what's on the ballot in the polling place. But if you're doing it at home, there's nothing stopping you know a group of friends or family members from sitting around the table together, talking about the issues, talking about what's on the ballot, and discussing it while you vote. And I know that's a thing that a lot of people do when they actually have their vote, when they're able to vote from home. It's a
Mhm.
real benefit. You also could take your time. You're in the comfort of your home, so you can sit there and Google stuff, or nowadays I guess Chat GPT stuff, uh, and just kind of find out and know a little bit better what's going on before you make that decision.
That's great. That's great. And I love even the example that you just shared. It triggered a thought for me that maybe one of the things our very informed voters here in Broward County that's listening, and even as we look to repurpose some of this content, that maybe in families you can create a voting discussion night. A
Mhm.
voting discussion night or dinner at your home so that you could talk about the ballot and the things that are on the ballot. What do you think about that idea?
I think that's a great idea. That's exactly what families should be doing. And by the way, if you choose later on to go and vote in person, the fact that you requested a vote by mail ballot does not stop you from doing that. It actually gives you that option. There's a deadline to request a vote by mail ballot. So if you don't go and request it, then you don't have that option, as opposed to if you make that request, then you have all the options available to you. So it's really just a win win. I would encourage everybody to go ahead and request that vote by mail ballot.
Absolutely. One last point about the vote by mail ballot that came up as a question, and again, a small group that I was in. If I requested a vote by mail, but I forgot to mail it in, what is my option on the day of voting?
So on the day of voting, if you still have your vote by mail ballot, you can bring it to one of our offices. So that applies not only to the day of the election, but also the day before. So we have 7 offices throughout the county. And if you wait until the last 2 days, you have to bring it to one of those offices. Now, for a period of time before that, in August, there's 9 days of early voting. And in October, technically early November, there will be 14 days of early voting, but that ends on the Sunday before the election. In both cases, early voting period and Sunday before the election. Early voting gives you an opportunity to either go vote in person anywhere in the county, or you can actually drop off your ballot at one of those early voting sites. In the case of November, for August, there'll actually be 21 sites. In November, we'll have 30 sites. So there's plenty of different places in the county where you can go and drop off your ballot. There's drop boxes there. They're always staffed, always manned. It's a very safe way to return your ballot, maybe even safer than putting it in the mail because it's coming straight to us. And
Mhm.
basically you have that option. I would encourage everybody not to wait until the last day because of the fact that you just have so many more options. And a lot of us have busy lives, we're working, and especially when you're working, you might be in another part of town, and on election day, your polling place is close to your house. So you either have to commute back there and get there before the polls close, which is risky. I mean, I think every time I get on 95, I see an accident. Uh, so, so basically, if you're, commuting, it's so much better to go to vote somewhere close to your job during early voting as opposed to waiting until the last day when you have to vote at that place that's close to your house.
That's beautiful, Supervisor Scott. So you gave us a really good outline of the differences. You got voting by mail, we have early voting, and voting on the day, on election day itself. So we have, several different ways that we can be involved in this process across the board. Let's talk about early voting just a little bit. So there are going to be 21 sites in the primary election, which is in August. And there'll be, I think you said over
30 sites in November, correct.
30 sites in November. And for early voting opportunities, I've also had people say to me, I didn't understand that I could show up to any early voting site. I thought I had to go to where my precinct was. Can you debunk that myth just really clearly?
Right. Anywhere in your county. So the county that you live in, if you live in Broward County, you can go anywhere in Broward County. So that
During
means
that early voting period.
during early voting only. Yeah, to be clear, only during early voting. The last day, election day, you have to go to that place that's close to your house, the place that's on your card. So the card that we give you tells you what your polling place is, but that's only for the last day. The rest of the time, you can vote, during the 2 week period before, you can actually go anywhere in the county, which is a really great benefit. And it's designed for working voters, who
Mhm.
on a Tuesday are busy with other things. You get that wide opportunity. Plus, the lines tend to be better, especially if you do it early in early voting. So, what
Yeah.
another little secret, I'll call it another cheat code to voting, is
Mhm.
that if you go really early,
Mhm.
you're pretty much walking in and out.
Absolutely.
Like you're not, for some reason, and we're open for 2 weeks. And I just remember last time I got a couple of emails about people that were angry about the line, but they showed up during the last 2 hours. After 2 weeks, they showed up during the last 2 hours. And for some reason, probably half the people who vote early show up during those last 2 hours. I don't know what it is, but
Well,
they
you
waited.
heard it here first. Get there early.
Yeah, they
Okay,
waited till
get to early voting
that last
early.
Sunday, and then everybody wants to go to the early voting site all at the same time, and then there ends up being lines. But I'll tell you, I guarantee, if you go on like Tuesday of the first week, you go right in and right out. There's nobody there.
And our supervisor, Scott, is guaranteeing you in and out if you're early. Okay, in and out if you're early. So
Yeah.
let's make that happen. So let's talk about polling places. You mentioned that our polling place, our polling location is on the card that is sent.
Hmm.
The reality is that most of us may not even remember where these cards are, right? So we go to where we remembered we voted the last time. Um, how can we fix that so that people are showing up at the right precinct so that they are not doing two things, being turned away because they're at the wrong place, or if someone has limited transportation, for example, they show up at the wrong place, they may not have transport to get to where they're supposed to be. So how can we prepare ourselves ahead of time to make sure that not only that we're informed, but our entire circle? So we're going to call it the circle. It could be your family, it could be your work circle, whomever it is, whomever is in your circle, you want to make sure that they have the right precinct. How do we do that?
So we have a lot of tools now available to make sure that that happens. Um, so we actually have a tool on our website where you can put in any address in Broward County, and it'll
Mm,
tell you what the polling place is for that address.
okay.
So, that's right on our website, browardvotes.gov. Works now. If you guys want to go test it out, you can put any address in. So that's different than looking up your own information, which I described earlier, where you can actually view your own voter info. You can see what your location is using your first name, last name, date of birth. But really, that other tool where you can look up any address is really an important tool because of the fact that on election day, you have to vote at your assigned polling place or your vote won't count. So if you wait until the last day, you literally have to go to that location and it
Yeah.
has to be where you live now. So if you've moved, you might look at your card and you see this place, but since you moved, that's not your place anymore. Now you
Mhm.
have a new location. And as soon as you walk into that polling place, the first question you're going to be asked is this still your address? And if
Mhm.
your answer is no, then they're going to ask for your new address. They're going to put it in, update your information, and at that point, you might be in the wrong place. Now that we've updated your address, you're supposed to be at this other polling place and you have to leave. So if you're there and it's
Mhm.
6:55 on election day, um, even if it's like the next precinct over, you're kind of out of luck. It's you're not going to make it. You have to be in line by 7 o'clock at the correct polling place.
Yes. Yes.
There's all these rules in place that are, I think, really caught up to stop the last minute folks. So when it comes to voting, we can't be last minute, even if we're last minute and a lot of other things. When it comes to voting,
Not last minute in this one.
yes.
So you're hearing it here. Breaking news, do not be last minute in voting, right? We are getting it. It is early enough for you to make your plan. One of the things, Supervisor Scott, that, we have to be very, very clear about is the fact that you can know where your precinct is, your voting site, all the options to be able to vote. But the first thing is you must be registered to vote. What a thought, right? How would you, if you just had, your 30-second commercial just to make a pitch or a plea to our Broward County residents to register to vote, what would you say to them?
I would say that civic participation is so critical to democracy. And, you got to understand one thing: public officials pay attention to who votes.
Yes.
Um, there's certain reasons that certain neighborhoods get better taken care of than others. A lot of people, attribute that to money, and maybe they're right. But I will tell you this: people do pay attention to who votes, and if it's a neighborhood where everybody votes, that neighborhood gets better taken care of than the neighborhood that. I mean, I'm not saying it should be this way.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that human beings, operate on incentives, and if they know, there's a bunch of voters living here, and everybody in these houses around this area vote. When there's something wrong, when there's a pothole in the street, it gets filled right away,
Yeah.
in those spaces.
Mhm.
So I can't impress that enough on people that it matters so much. And for so many of our communities, also, there might be a lot of immigrants. There might be people who've gotten in trouble with the law and have lost their right to vote, and and that is what makes it even more important for the people who are eligible to vote to actually participate when you consider that so many people are actually ineligible to vote. People who live in our communities, people who are part of our lives, for one reason or another, don't have the right to vote. Those of us who do, we should never let that pass us by.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that because we have to fill the gap at times or stand in the gap as they would say to make sure that our communities on a whole are represented. One other question that, again, small group conversations questions come up. What piece of identification do we need to bring with us when we show up to vote?
I love that question because that is something that is currently changing. But I think the first thing everybody needs to know is that this year's election, it's the same as it's always been, right? So there is a new law that's going to restrict some of those IDs. That law goes into effect on January 1st of 2027. So it's after this election cycle is over. I
So
encourage,
this election cycle, I can bring my driver's license as an example.
well, that one's going to stay.
Okay.
So the ones that are going away are, probably most famously, there'll be a smaller list, but people who are using a student ID to vote, that will not be allowed starting next year. Also, if you use a retirement community ID, that's not going to be allowed next year. So the key is, and what I would encourage everybody to do is, even if you don't drive, you can actually get a state ID, but you want to go get that state ID because what you really need in the future is going to be what they call a real ID. Now, some of us may have heard about real ID in the past because it's been necessary for travel for a while now. So if you want to fly, you needed a real ID. Now for, it's been a bit a couple years maybe
Mhm.
that you needed it to fly. And starting next year, I'm not saying you have to have a real ID to vote, but it's going to make things so much easier for you because of some of the policy changes and the way things are going to be in the future. Mainly around, I'm sure people have heard these stories about the immigration system and that people are concerned about non-citizens voting and all that. That's part of what this new law was meant to address. And there's going to be a lot more checks that are happening. And having the real ID will basically exempt you from that process as long as you were a US citizen at the time that you got the real ID.
Great. So again, so none of those new rules apply until after this 2026 election. So we'll be doing a lot of informing and educating on that, coming past January 1, 2027. But just get ahead of the curve. I think that's the point that Supervisor Scott is making to us today. So speaking of that, the idea of election integrity, people have questions, comments are made related to it. Give us some thoughts, Supervisor Scott, as to what safeguards are in place to ensure that our elections here in Broward County are secure, that they're accurate, and that they're transparent.
Yeah. That's such a big thing for us because obviously keeping people safe at all these different polling places is
Mhm.
paramount.
Yeah.
We do work closely with local law enforcement, all the law enforcement agencies in Broward County. We communicate with them, we let them make sure they know what's going on, to make sure they know where the sites are, and we also ask them not to make a obvious physical presence. So what a lot of times is happening is that there's law enforcement observing the sites, but they're either doing it from a distance or they are plain clothed. And they might be in a plain unmarked car, plain clothed, but they're there in case there's a problem. They can get in quickly and resolve any kind of situation that might come up. So that's how we do at all of our locations, in terms of the security. Big thing. As far as other things like trying to battle bad information that's on the internet. I feel like we do a lot in terms of engaging on social media to try to give people the right information because there's so much bad information on the internet these days that, if you're ever in doubt or you see something that sounds crazy, or honestly, if you're in Broward County and the information isn't coming from my office,
Mhm.
go see what we're saying and get
Yes.
information from us because we're always posting online. We have a very informative website. We actually have a little chat bot that'll answer questions for you. We've got all kinds of things available for people that that'll make sure that they get the right information.
Right.
So, from security, I kind of think about it in those terms of like, kind of like the information security, the physical security, all these kind of things. We have a a lot of regulations we have to follow in terms of
Mhm.
securing our digital assets and our voting machines and all that kind of stuff. And we always follow that stuff pretty closely.
Very good. Thank you for that. And I know throughout our virtual conference today, the website is showing up for everyone to be able to use and get back to browardvotes.gov to be able to learn more. So, again, let's use that. So, I know we only have a few minutes left, and I wanted to really talk through one aspect is to register to vote. That is great. And we want people to register. We want them to know all the information that is necessary for them to be able to be in the right place for voting and to come up with the voting plan for themselves and for their family. But one of the things we know, Supervisor Scott, right, to your point, elected officials pay attention to who votes, where they vote, and in essence, how they vote. And that data is available. And when we look at midterm elections and presidential elections in terms of those, and we're coming up on a midterm election here, the voter turnout sometimes is really interesting here in Broward.
Yes.
And please correct me if I'm off, but I think in our last midterm, I should say, election, we had about a 50% turnout
Correct.
of
Yeah.
eligible. Let me be clear,
Slightly
of
before.
eligible voters. So 50% of the individuals who were eligible to vote in 2022 approximately showed up to vote.
Yes.
Let's let that sink into our audience.
And imagine how different it could be if everybody shows up,
If
right?
everybody shows up,
If everybody shows up, it would
if
change
everybody
everything
shows up.
because
Now we know
the
what
margins aren't
presidential.
that big. The margins are pretty small. If we could just move that needle and get to 75% of our people voting, it would change everything.
Yeah, right. So when we think about that, and even in the presidential election in 2024, we were approximately 65%, coming out to vote. So we're not even, getting into, 80%, levels. I don't know when that number ever was or has it ever been in the last few cycles. But let's just talk about, and if you could just share with folks why it is so important for our residents, our eligible voters, once again, to participate in local elections and how this impacts their everyday life in Broward County.
Well, the biggest thing I would point to is the fact that Tallahassee, our state government, is very, very active. When you look at things like this new law that's coming out about voting, they tried to pass a similar law at the federal level, like it was called the Save America Act. And there was an attempt to make this a federal law, and it failed because you don't really get a lot of new laws coming out of Washington. But
Mm-hmm.
who does manage to get new laws passed? Tallahassee. So, when you're talking about our state legislature and
Mm-hmm.
our governor, they get stuff done that can't happen at the federal level. The federal level really is not a lot happening there. And for some reason, we are completely reversed where we focus entirely on those federal elections.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really focus on our local, state and local elections as if people like, say, the mayor of your city, your county commissioner, people like that probably have a much bigger impact on your day-to-day life, what your community is like, what type of what type of amenities are present in your community. All
Yeah.
that has to do with your city commission, your mayor,
Mm-hmm.
and then to a degree your county commissioners. A lot of stuff we have, our airports, our seaports, a lot of things are controlled locally. And in all honesty, I don't necessarily think that a lot of us see the impact of some of these high officials in Washington on a day-to-day basis. We don't really see that in our neighborhoods, but you do see the impact of these local officials that most people aren't even aware of and don't bother to participate in those elections.
Yeah. As they say, all politics is local, right? So
Yeah.
when we think about just the need for us to stay focused on that. So one of the things that I also think is really important for us to consider, and I learned this from you and your team a few election cycles ago. You came and met with our staff
Mhm.
and gave us some information. You employ people
Yeah.
during election time. Can you talk to us about that as well?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We hire thousands of people. So if
Yep.
you're interested in being a poll worker, there's a link right on our website, browardvotes.gov. Go sign up today. We're still looking for people to help us out, and we would love to have you. So please come help. We're pretty much there for August, but we're still working. We're still trying to recruit a few more people, but we definitely need more people for November. So absolutely. I hope that everybody will, everybody that's able to would sign up to be a poll worker because we'd really appreciate your help.
And what is you hire high school students as well?
So actually, because of recent changes in the labor laws,
Oh,
we're not able to do that anymore. That was done in the past.
okay.
But now you can't have a kid work more than 8 hours on the day before school day. And election day tends to be a day before school day. And
Hmm.
actually, so if you work election day, you actually, one of the requirements is that you're coming in about 5:30 in the morning. You might be there until say 8 to 9 o'clock at night, somewhere between 8 and 9 o'clock at night. So it's a long day.
Yeah.
Um, and
Those child labor laws. Oh.
and that's unfortunate because those are probably the people that better handle it. We rely a whole lot on our retirees, and we're so grateful. But that's a really long day for some folks who've been retired
Mhm.
for 20 years and just don't really have to work for that long a period of time on a regular basis. So
So
yeah,
if you have some time and you are available for the election day, election cycle, because there is some training and so forth that's involved in it, make sure that you're going to the Supervisor of Elections website and signing up for an opportunity to work and gain some resources, because things are expensive. We need to, get some affordability. So as we close out today, one of the things that was really important for us to have you here today is to make sure that any misconceptions, the misinformation that is out there, is debunked at some level. Is there anything that we might not have shared in our questions and our back and forth today that you want Broward County residents to be able to know for this election cycle in August and in November?
So, yes, I'll tell you, I think what the biggest misconception people have is that the August election is only for people who are registered with a major party.
Mm.
Now, while it's true for a what's called a closed party primary, which some of the races are, you do have to be registered with a particular party. So, say for example, a lot of people are paying attention to the big District 20 election that's happening and the Democratic primary in that race. Due to gerrymandering,
Hmm.
due to gerrymandering, there's
Hmm.
a whole lot of Democrats packed into District 20. A
Hmm.
whole lot of Democrats. Matter of fact, there's 3 Democrats for every Republican in that district. So I
Wow.
want everybody to think about what that means in terms of voting in August or voting in November. Which election is actually going to pick the next congressman? Which one is it? Um, and if you understand the fact that there's 3 Democrats for every Republican, it should be clicking in your mind where the decisive election actually is.
Hmm.
But even if you're not registered with a major party, we have probably one of the most important roles in our community is school board, and that's nonpartisan. So you can vote in those school board races. You can get to know who these people are running for school board. Even if you don't have kids in school, we all benefit from the public education system, and we need
Right.
our good school board members. Judges, judges, so big, especially
Hmm.
for our community, having the right people on the bench. You get to elect your judges here in Florida. And
Yes.
that happens, by and large, that happens in August. And it's nonpartisan. So you get a ballot. You get a ballot with school board members. You get a ballot with judges. And
Hmm.
sometimes, actually, not even sometimes, oftentimes in Broward County, because of our demographics, you may have races where everybody in that contest is the same party. And if everybody in that contest is the same party, it goes on everybody's ballot, whether you're registered with that party or not. It's called a universal primary, and it's very common.
Wow.
So, so the
So
biggest
the message here, Supervisor Scott, is that if you are eligible to vote, regardless of no party affiliation or party affiliation, you need to show up in the primaries to vote in August.
yes, yes.
There's things for you to vote for.
Yes, absolutely. And I know
Show
it's
up.
confusing because people say, well, you have to be registered with a major party to vote in the primaries, and then we call the August election a primary. So then people connect it and say, I must not be able to vote in August because I'm not with a major party. And that's really what I want to debunk. Is that's the part that's just totally untrue. There's lots of important things on that ballot that everybody gets to vote on.
Wow, thank you for that. I think that's a great place for us to leave it this morning. And we might need to put that on repeat every day up until the August election. So now I'm taking the word primary out of my lexicon and just calling it the August elections. Everybody show up to vote. Know where to vote, Broward votes.gov to learn more. Supervisor Scott, thank you for joining us and sharing not only your experiences and your expertise, but being so open and just talking plainly to us. Our conversation today is meant to inform our voters, keep everybody empowered, and ensure the fact that regardless of our party affiliation, we can participate in every election, So we encourage everyone to verify their registration. First of all, register to vote,
Mhm.
verify your registration, learn all the deadlines that you need to learn about on the website, and make sure that you create a plan for yourself and for your family to be able to vote. And don't forget about that family dinner, that family voting dinner. Everybody should be hosting it at the house. If you have a family reunion, host it at the family reunion. Do something. We want to thank you all for attending and continue to spread the word. We're here for you. The Urban League of Broward County believes in mobilizing the movement and ensuring the fact that everyone has access to voting. Thank you so much, Supervisor Scott.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you. So I want you to stay tuned, and we'll be up next with our panel for you to learn just a little bit more about how to participate in the election cycles coming up. back and thank you for staying with us. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome our moderator for our power panel, Ms. Sherry Brown Grosvenor. She's the community vice president of community impact at Community Foundation here in Broward County. She is a friend, a partner, and definitely a strategist on many different levels. So thank you, Sherry, for being our fantastic moderator for this power panel.
Absolutely. It is my pleasure, Dr. Baugh. And I am so excited to be here with everyone this morning. And the topic is so timely and it's so relevant and valuable to help attendees this morning understand how organizations and individuals can strengthen civic participation in meaningful ways. I've been at a couple of conferences, national conferences lately, and this has been the topic. So thank you for providing this information to the community. So welcome everyone to Mobilizing the Power, Cultivating a Culture of Civic Impact. We'll explore this morning how organizations can engage employees and communities through voting initiatives, volunteerism, thoughtful communication, partnerships, and just all the things that make up community while building trust and driving a measurable impact. So I am delighted to introduce our panelists this morning. We have Shirley King, who I have known for a very long time. So, welcome, Shirley. She is the CEO of Optimized Solutions Group. Shirley is a human resource leader and an expert who helps organizations think more intentionally about the role they play in civic life, translating big ideas into practical approaches that align employee experiences, business priorities, and community impact. So, welcome, Shirley. Great to see you.
Good morning. Thank you,
You always wear
Sherry.
the best eyeglasses, the best, I tell you, the best hater blockers there are out there on the market.
Thank
So,
you.
welcome.
I'm happy
Uh,
to be here.
Thank you. And we also have Sandra Dennis. Sandra is the executive director from Miami Workers Center. Sandra brings deep experience in grassroots organizing, advancing community-led civic initiatives, and building trust through nonpartisan engagement across South Florida. Welcome, Sandra.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Wonderful. And our third panelist is Amari Janot. He is from Turner Construction and leads efforts to integrate civic responsibility and community impact into business practices through strong partnerships and measurable community outcomes. Welcome, Amari.
Good morning. Happy to be here.
Excellent, excellent. So, yes, we're in for a treat with these panelists here. And we want to jump right into it because we only have about 30 minutes. So we want to get in as much as we possibly can. So as a warm-up question for each panelist, if each of you, starting with Shirley, can respond to the question, how do you personally define civic impact in the context of your work? Like, what does it look like when it's working well? And maybe give an example.
Thank you, Sherry.
Mhm.
Civic impact is when we begin to stop asking the question, what can we receive for our community? And we begin to contribute to our community. Right now, we're living in a time where most people are feeling disconnected from themselves and even disconnected in how do I make a difference right now? So civic impact is what helps us and the people we lead, because we're here talking about organizations, and the bulk of the organizations are not our leaders, it's the people that are doing the work. So
Right.
civic impact helps us lead the people to continue to belong to themselves while they're doing the work. And that's important because that's how they're going to say yes to the employee engagement programs that the company is already doing or already wants to do in order to engage in civic impact and community service.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Shirley. That's a really, really good response there. Sandra, would you please answer the question as well? How do you define
Absolutely.
civic impact?
Absolutely. I would say that civic impact being, I would say my word of emphasis is that we would already see everything around us, whether it be our school systems, whether it be healthcare, already working on behalf of our people. The question around civic is like, how can we engage to ensure that these systems are working on behalf of our people? And so people would have access to healthcare. People would be able to go to the schools that they need to and they want to go without accumulating so much debt. We would see utilities come down because we believe that people should have access to light, water, etc. And so the impact word is really that people would already, the systems would be working on behalf of the people already.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, impact is a operative term there. Amari, how would you answer that question, defining civic impact in an example?
I mean, I would define civic impact as creating bridges towards opportunity, right?
Mm-hmm.
In my day-to-day role, I basically focus on three things. If you're a student in South Florida and you're trying to figure out how to come into the industry, how to get
Mm-hmm.
school paid for, how to basically, join other middle class, upper class, whatever your desire is how to create those pathways to make sure that they're there and supported. The same thing with small businesses, right? When we look at impact, we're looking at, if we have a construction project in your backyard, that has an economic impact. How many people from that area are working on that project? How many people from that area had contract opportunities in that project?
Mm-hmm.
So for us, civic impact has to be, are we creating pathways
Mm-hmm.
for the individuals in our communities to have access? A lot of people in our communities have not had, access to opportunity and fair
Mm-hmm.
access to, just viable pathways forward.
Mm. Very, very, very true. I see there's a theme in each of your responses of access, and opportunity, which are operative terms when we're looking at civic engagement, civic involvement, because people have to have purpose when they're involved in a community. They have to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not in a selfish way of what's in it for them, but it's really what's in it for them on behalf of the community, right?
Mhm.
So that they're
Mhm.
opening doors for not just themselves, but for the entire community. Thank you for those responses. Now we'd like to maybe deal with the topic of engagement strategies, right? So if perhaps, and Shirley, starting with you again, what do you see as the most practical, low barrier ways organizations can support civic participation, such as voting, volunteering, community engagement,
Mhm.
without overextending staff or resources? How can organizations help facilitate engagement?
For years of facilitating employee engagement for one of the local businesses here, one of the practical ways is going to one of our community partners. And in this particular case, it used to be United Way, because no matter what city or state I'm talking
Mhm.
about, in the state of Florida, they had access that
Yeah.
I needed. Instead of me overworking myself and my team, they had the
Mhm.
access. So you meet with them, you tell them what you want, and based on your culture and your employee engagement program, then they are able to align you with what your
Mhm.
organization goals are for that. And so that's probably 50% of the work done. The other part
Mhm.
is making sure to communicate why we are engaged in our local community. You can go back to your culture statement with that most of the time when it
Mhm.
comes to your why itself, but every employee understanding why volunteerism is important, why we want you to have access to your community, bringing
Mhm.
people in to have those conversations. That is the most practical way to do it. And if you're small
Mhm.
enough that you're not able to do that, then there's just intercompany communications that
Mhm.
are consistent.
Excellent. Excellent. Yes, the great plug for United Way. They have many volunteer opportunities available to organizations, the staff, and like you said, it really, from an HR standpoint, it saves you time from having to try
Yes,
to
it
coordinate and
is.
organize it all. So
Yes.
they're right there in our backyard here. There's also Hands on Broward to mention as well, that companies can tap into for volunteer opportunities. But Shirley, while I have you speaking,
Mhm.
just to respond to this as well, many organizations want to remain, strictly nonpartisan. It's a very
Mhm.
like interesting climate we're in, where conversations are a little touchy depending
Mhm.
on what you're discussing. from an HR and compliance standpoint, what are the clear do's and don'ts for encouraging participation while maintaining that neutrality and trust, so people aren't, kind of crossing those political lines or partisan lines?
The communication is sharing the resources that
Mm,
the voting time is coming up, sharing the links for it. So something very simple is that, one of the things I would do in order to include that is that I had this engagement program. So monthly they will put everything on a calendar that's annual. So while they're
mhm,
talking about is National Cake Day, guess what, we get to talk about what's coming up as well. And
mm,
what's coming up are these resources for voting. So we want to provide you with resources. So that same link we provided for something as simple as Ocean Day or something like that.
mhm.
In that
Okay.
same conversation, in that monthly communication, we can talk about resources for voting. And so now we're not placing that voting conversation in its
Right.
own bucket. We're
Ah,
aligning it with full engagement.
okay. That is such a great idea. And you rarely see anything dealing with voting or politics um, promoted in a workplace, because people are a little sensitive about the issue and don't want to appear to be leaning one way or another. So I think
Absolutely.
that is such a wonderful idea. Just make it a part of your communication and promotional collateral throughout the year. It's just kind of
Yes,
baked into it.
yes.
Awesome. Awesome idea. So, Sandra, since we're talking about nonpartisan, let me turn it to you. Where do organizations most often unintentionally lose trust or appear partisan, even when there is no intent? Where have you seen that kind of get tripped up a bit in organizations, and what are the corrective steps organizations can take if they realize they've crossed that line?
Absolutely. I would especially say now. There are going to be a lot of candidates that are wearing their campaign paraphernalia that might show
Oh,
up to your
wow.
organization events.
Mhm.
For us, we are a political organization, although we are C3. We don't have a C4, so all of our stuff would need to be
Mhm.
nonpartisan. And
Right.
so people will want to be in your pictures with their campaign materials. And we need to politely ask them not to be in our pictures if they're going
Oh,
to wear their campaign materials, if they're not an invited guest, they need to wear
mm,
neutral clothing, quite frankly. And some
mhm,
of those times people don't feel comfortable having those conversations with people who may
mhm,
become their elected official. And so we just say, listen, we have to follow the law, right? We don't want to have an assumption that we are leaning one way or the other. And so we're going to
mhm,
actually take to not be upfront or to not be in this picture, not to be in this photo op, because
mhm.
folks who are not there will not understand if they just see a post, if they just
Right.
see that we're actually not endorsing you. And so I would ask organizations to be very
Oh,
careful, especially right now, because
mhm.
people want pictures. They want pictures of themselves and communities. And
Right.
you don't want to get mixed up in a picture on their website as if
Uh-huh.
you're endorsing that candidate.
Oh wow, that's really good advice. And also to that point, if you're a 501c3, you have to remain neutral, and so forth. So, and would you also say that employees, if they want to participate in any type of political activities, it's outside of work hours and it's in their name, not in the name of the company. So if they're going to a commission meeting or any kind of gathering, they're representing themselves and not your company, right?
Absolutely. I would say not to wear organizational paraphernalia.
Okay.
If you're going
Mhm.
to a commission meeting on behalf of yourself, we
Right.
do go to commission meetings as an organization
Right.
on specific
Mhm.
issues. But outside of that, when you're like
Mhm.
endorsing a candidate, I'll say I know a lot of elected officials.
Right.
I was in a fellowship with the supervisor of election. We know each other pretty closely.
Right.
However, when I'm at work with my Miami Worker Center,
Mhm.
that is a supervisor of elections. I cannot endorse him. I cannot wear my
Right.
Miami Worker Center shirt to this
Mhm.
event because, again, the
Right.
presumption that I
Mhm.
might be endorsing him may
Correct.
actually be more harmful to the organization than I'm actually just thinking about it. And so just being hyper alert. And I'm also
Mhm.
telling folks to watch your time right now. Like many of
Right.
us work beyond 40 hours. We're always working. And right
Mhm.
now, you need to be mindful so that you're not at a political event and
Right.
you're saying it's for work accidentally because you typically attend events for work. Just being
Right.
mindful what's happening at the event. Are people making appeals for you to endorse? Did you say
Mhm.
support someone through
Mhm.
dollars? Did you swipe your card and didn't really think
Right.
about it? All of those things can be
Yeah.
used against you if you're also putting it on your timesheet or you're saying you're at work.
That thank you for that guidance on that. And also I would add to be careful for solicitations via email, your work email. Don't respond, use your own personal email off the clock if you want to respond to any political solicitations. I get them all the time, so I intentionally don't respond, because of course companies have the authority to go in and look at emails when they want, right, Shirley?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
right, it's collateral of the company, not your own personal,
Absolutely.
right? So, Amari, I'd like to have you weigh in on this. What is one simple, scalable tactic that you've seen that consistently increases civic participation without creating confusion or political risk?
I mean, there's several ways about it. Right before, the good doctor was talking about civic engagement through, being a person that's working on election day, right? That's a
Mhm.
bipartisan activity.
Oh, yeah.
You can be a poll worker, and we encourage that. We make sure that we support that if a staff member is off because they decided to, assist your community during a very important, as the people feel empowered and go
Mhm.
out there and make their decision. It's a very good and neutral way to assist, your local community and yourself, right? You're giving
Mhm.
back. Um, we do have associations with, like we mentioned, United Way. We work with Boys and Girls Club.
Okay.
So as far
Mhm.
as the engagement part of it, we work with the Urban League, obviously. So we do have, bipartisan ways or
Mhm.
apolitical ways of engaging,
Mhm.
making sure that our staff members feel that they have, the freedom and the leverage, because we have employee resource groups that caters to specific, they're open to all, but they're, women in Turner, for instance, right? So we
Right.
have groups that gather, share information, share
Mhm.
opportunities. I think the biggest thing, and then Shirley can also, either verify this, is that the biggest thing for us is to make sure that our senior leadership creates the right culture and environment for
Mhm.
engagement, right?
Right.
Sometimes I do work with other firms where it's, that lower level employee isn't going to feel as empowered to
Right.
go work a poll or to go out and door knock just to get people to register, right? They're not
Mhm.
going to feel as empowered as, unless senior leadership is either with them
Right.
or is overtly saying, hey, it is okay if you go, whether it's on a weekend or take a half day and go door
Mhm.
knocking to get people registered to vote, because it's important to vote and they need to know deadlines, right? So we
Mhm.
have created those pathways to ensure that our
Oh.
staff members feel that,
Mhm.
yes, we're encouraging this, we support this type of activity,
Mhm.
and just go back and have a positive impact in the communities that you
Mhm.
come from, and that's something that's very important for us.
Oh, that's really great, because encouraging people to vote isn't crossing a political line. It's an advocacy to exercise your right. You know, if that right is still bestowed upon you to vote, right? It's an activity that's a part of your inalienable rights. So I like that. I like the promotion to actually go out and vote, and it would be nice to see more companies promote that within. And to your point, especially the lower tier employees who may feel like, it's not encouraged or they don't have a role to play. That's very simple. Just, hey, take the time off to go vote, treat it as you would jury duty. Right, you have to show up for jury duty, so treat voting in the same way would be my suggestion to that. So, Amari, while I have you speaking, how can organizations expand their civic engagement efforts, maybe beyond elections, because we tend to focus on elections a lot. But how can civic engagement be expanded beyond elections to support like the longer term community involvement and impact? So elections are done now. What's next, right?
And no, that's a great question, because I think that's where, with regards to any either elections, or you can think about holidays, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those, whether it's Black History Month or Hispanic Heritage Month,
Mm-hmm.
there's other activities throughout the year that you
Yeah.
can participate in, because it's not a month. You have to understand and be intentional with regards to as they said in the panel, discussion that we're having before, most of the elections that people are being impacted on are the local ones, right? The ones that
Mhm.
you are not paying attention to,
Right.
the one that historically have had the lowest voter turnouts, right? Are your
Mhm.
local elections, right? Your national elections are big, flashy. There's a ton of money involved.
Mhm.
But in Florida, your judges are elected.
Right.
So there are ways to engage in those types of activities. But I
Mhm.
think that what we need to do is make sure that we don't inform people weeks before the event, right? It
Mhm.
has to be like, hey, we're gonna have a lunch and learn in January with things, and say, hey, these are the events that are coming up. These are
Mhm.
milestones that are coming up. These are organizations that are hosting events. I've seen
Right.
museums in Fort Lauderdale that are hosting great cultural events. So
Mhm.
it's similar with like Juneteenth, right?
Yep.
Don't gear up for Juneteenth the day before, right? Because then
Right.
that's how you end up having a holiday, but people forget why they're
Mhm.
having the holiday. And to me, that's
Mhm.
important, right? Memorial
Right.
Day passed. You need to
Right.
understand the significance, what went into that. And what we do here is that every month we do
Mhm.
have, inclusion events where we talk about these are the historical impacts. We put out an internal press release just for staff members that they can go on and look at and say, these are the
Mhm.
historical impacts. This is why these people matter. And I'm telling you
Mhm.
this in March. That way, in June, you get it. Things are surrounding you. Yes, it's Pride Month, for instance, where it becomes commercialized marketing
Mhm.
as opposed to these are real people that fought and
Right.
struggled for this.
Right. Yeah.
One of my favorite activities used to be when I was in New York is I would love going into a school building, and the first thing I would always ask the students is, your building is named Medgar Evers. Can you tell me who he was or why?
Right.
Right? And you would think, and then whether I went to McKinley for junior high school, and it would be the same thing. It's like, do you know why this building was
Right.
named after this individual and why that matters and what
Yeah.
era? And then you would get looks and you would get that one student. So for me, it's always having that education ahead of time to ensure that when the moment happens, it's more
Mhm.
routine. You're not overwhelmed by everything that's going on because you understand what it took to get it there.
Wow, that's great. That's great. A really great example. The schools and buildings. Yeah. What's the meaning behind the name, right? I'd like for Shirley and Sandra just to give an example as well on how civic engagement can be promoted beyond just the election time periods. Any examples of what your companies have done or organizations?
Sure. So the Miami Worker Center is a we consider ourselves to be a political organization, and
Mm-hmm.
so we're pretty much at a lot of the commission meetings. We have campaigns that we have to get commissioners to sponsor so that it can be passed
Mm-hmm.
on the dais, whether
Right.
it is affordable housing. I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to get the utility rates with FPL down. Whether it be around building mental health facilities. And so
Okay.
it is actually very much we're doing this regularly, but I would say to the point that was made earlier, it is actually in our employee handbook that people get
Mm.
time off to vote. It is an expectation that they use that time. If
Mm.
they're not using it to vote, the plan is to actually have you connected with 10 of your people to
Mm.
have them. So let's say they voted early. We want you to use the election day on
Mhm.
us on paid time off, quite frankly, to get the rest of your community engaged in
Oh,
voting. So
wow.
have you talked to your 10 friends? Have they talked to their 10 friends?
Mhm.
So using
Mhm.
that day as a phone banking day, or even to the supervisor's point earlier, to protect the polls. And so can you go and
Right.
observe what's happening at the poll and
Mhm.
report back? The last thing I'll say is I think that for us, we remember the Al Gore, George Bush election because a lot of that countdown happened in Liberty City. Miami Worker Center is headquartered in Liberty City. We know
Oh.
really well what it means for the vote to be stolen in Black communities. And so again,
Mm.
the point that was made earlier, the more we can talk about history, the more we understand what's at stake, the better our communities will be. And so, how we can embed that into our organizational culture is what we're always figuring out. Like,
Right.
do you know not only the elected officials? Because I work in Miami, but I'm in Broward. I'm a Broward baby, born and raised in District 20. Um, and so,
Uh-huh.
like, I actually need to not only know what's happening in Miami for work, but I actually need to
Right.
also know what's happening in the district that I live, in the county that I live in, and in
Yep.
the city that I live in as well. And we do pop quizzes.
That's
Do you
yeah.
know, et cetera?
No, that's great. That's great. Really, really great examples. So you're basically looking at a variety of issues, and you're around the clock, like 24/7, addressing these issues in a variety of ways, in the community, and bringing people along with you in those communities, right? To
Absolutely.
show up and give voice. That's excellent. Any examples, Shirley, you'd like to share? I know you were with a major company for many, many years, from when we first met. Oh, you're on mute, Shirley. Unmute yourself. There you go.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted now. In the
Mm-hmm.
in the corporate for-profit sector, believe it or not, one of the biggest things that I used to do is, like Amari said, engaging those leaders is going to be as important, because again, the most employees that work with you are not the leaders, they're the people that are doing the work. Most people, including leaders, did not know that we had a voting leave to the vote, that you have time off, 2 hours time off to go vote, and whether you leave
Mm-hmm.
early or you come in later. So we would start that months,
Mm-hmm.
reminding leaders, in the HR team, that this is what we have, our employees have access to. Now, how it's done, we
Okay.
had them to submit how it's done. So everybody can't be off the same time because of the work we do, but create
Right.
allow us to see how you're managing that. That was probably the biggest thing. And the second is the consistent employee engagement throughout the year. Every department had a different amount of
Mm-hmm.
hours that we requested, that they make sure that they had those volunteer hours in every department, so that leader actually had to be engaged with their employees in
Mm-hmm.
getting that done. And so we made those hours, but the employees always came back with being able to have access, seeing something, knowing something that they did not know before. And that's how we did that year round. So we didn't wait
Mm-hmm.
until the time frame for voting. It was embedded in everything we did year
Right.
round. Mhm.
God, oh, that's awesome. That is awesome. I'm seeing that theme. It's a 24/7, 365,
It
right?
is.
That's what civic engagement
Mhm,
is. It's not a one-time event, right?
mhm,
It really needs to be embedded in the culture of the organization. And then if everyone knows that, they'll work toward they would act on that. And so that kind of leads to my last question for each of you, because in our organizations and companies, it's all about measurement and impact, like why, what is the outcome that we're looking for. So what are meaningful and realistic ways organizations can measure civic engagement outcomes beyond just the numbers? We see a lot of people show up for the 2Ks or 5K runs or whatever the activity might be, or they might you can count the number of people who are going out to vote. But are there other meaningful and realistic ways that it can be measured, civic engagement can be measured? Amari, maybe I'll jump to you on that one.
To your point, I think yes, the 5Ks are great. We do quite a few of them nationally, but I think this is where I kind of lean on my chambers of commerce and organizations like the Urban League. What we've noticed is that smaller events, one, develop sincere connections. So if you're in a
Mm-hmm.
restaurant in Miami Gardens with a specific chamber of
Mm-hmm.
commerce and you bring 5 or 10, Turner staff members, that's a sincere connection, right? You have local politicians,
Right.
but they're at the really local level where they're just trying to, make sure that the city is taken care of. You're supporting a local
Mm-hmm.
business. And then your staff members actually feel like they're engaging a real person. Not that at 5Ks you don't,
Mm-hmm.
but at a 5K, or any of those types of major events, yes, they're huge fundraising tools, first and foremost. They bring
Mm-hmm.
awareness to a cause, which is great. But at the
Right.
end of the day, you're talking about 5, 10,000 people. People tend to cluster.
Mm-hmm.
People have comfort, so staff members from one firm will stay with other coworkers of that firm. But when you have it,
Right.
we've
That's
done it here. Our office is here in the city of Miramar. We've done events where they're just local lunch and learns with the local chamber of commerce, and I think that's much
right.
more sustainable because employees can go back to
Mm-hmm.
that establishment to support it. They'll meet those
Mm-hmm.
individuals once again. So I think smaller environments are more
Mm-hmm.
productive with
Mm-hmm.
regards to not the big number. Yeah, you can have 30 people show up an event for 3 hours and then disappear after. But if you can have those five
Right.
connecting in a place where they can actually feel
Hmm.
like they can talk to everyone and actually get to know someone, I think if you have a long-term
Right.
plan, that is a much better impact. Even with students, right? You go to a boys and girls
Yeah.
club, you go once with 15 people, it's great. If you have smaller groups of 3 or 4 that can actually connect with those kids,
Mhm.
go on a
Right.
quarterly basis, that's a lot more impactful.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. That's a really great example of how to look at it from a qualitative versus a quantitative standpoint, right? It's qualitative. It's inherent in that term. It's the quality of that engagement that extends beyond just the count. It's small and intimate. I like that. That's really great. Shirley, what would you say are realistic measures for civic engagement beyond just the quantitative?
We would often do, and I would often have the employee engagement survey especially when we'd have someone come to the facility and present. And it wouldn't be talking about really who to vote for, how to vote, etc. But it would be
Mhm.
someone from a chamber or someone in that particular sector that's talking about the community resources, etc. And so most
Oh,
oftentimes, those were the ones that gave us a lot of positive impact because the employees are hearing what they didn't know about what they had access to within their communities. And so we would use that tool.
mm,
And then the next day, within the next 7 days, I always did it within the next 7 days, we would ask the business managers to have
mm,
conversation with 2 to 3 of your employees, and let's find
mhm.
out, how that really impacted them. And come together in that seven
Oh,
day meeting, and then we would discuss, what they thought they wanted more of, what it is that they really didn't know, and how we would, because that was quarterly, and so how we would do that differently the
mhm.
next, because I didn't, it was so many people. There's no
Oh,
way that one HR department had access to everything, but they trust that manager, they trust that
right.
supervisor. So that is who I had to
Mhm.
support in getting that quantitative and qualitative
Mm.
efforts in that. Mhm.
Excellent, excellent. That, that's great how you engaged your leadership team around it. So,
Mhm.
what what
That
what
you
would you say,
see my
Sandra,
head leadership,
are
engaging leadership.
measurables? Yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly. Yeah, it's great because it's coming from you to them, and so what's important to the boss is important to the the next layer there. So
Mhm.
that's great. Great example is making it making it the responsibility of your leadership team to be accountable for the experience of the employees around civic engagement as a measure. Sandra, would you like to add any examples beyond
Sure.
quantitative?
So we typically think about it as like transactions and transformations. And so transactions being
Mm-hmm.
how many people we get to go to a community forum, how many people show up to a strategy meeting on housing, and transformations being how many of these people step into leadership roles. And one of the things I think about a lot is
Mm-hmm.
one of our campaigns to extend Section 8 vouchers. And so we would have tenants who are on Section 8 be on the waiting list to get their Section 8 for decades. They would get their Section 8, can't find a home, and then lose their voucher because their voucher would expire. And so we started meeting with public
Mm-hmm.
housing community development in Miami-Dade County with our Section 8 voucher holders saying, look, this system is rigged. It cannot work like this. You have the power to extend the time that they
Mm-hmm.
have. It should be an automatic extension so that they don't lose in hearing, or that they would
Right.
automatically be guaranteed a hearing if their voucher expired. And so we saw these Section 8 voucher holders that many people don't see as worthy, don't see them as qualified, really stand up for themselves, really
Mm-hmm.
demand that they be treated justly, that they get a right to a hearing, and they won. Like these are things that people think are outside of our capability to do, that our communities can't actually stand on business and say, we actually believe during a COVID, another example is during COVID, moratorium, that people are not working, that we should hold the line and see how can we keep people in their homes. And there were hundreds of
Mm-hmm.
tenants in Miami-Dade County that allowed for not only COVID, but what Miami Worker Center worked on, a tenant bill of rights, that actually won in Miami, then came
Mm-hmm.
to Broward, or Orange County passed a tenant bill of rights. It got preempted on some level, but the win in that was that initially in April 2020, tenants had 15 days to be notified of an eviction or an increase
Mm,
in their rental period. During the tenant bill of rights era, we moved that to 60. Governor DeSantis
mm,
preempted and moved it back to 30. But 15 to 30 is time
mm,
frame that our communities need in order to figure out what's
Mm.
next
yeah,
for them. And this only happened
right.
because communities engaged. They came to meetings, they
Mm,
came to the commission, they met with their commissioners, they had rallies. And so I just want to name, like, for
right.
me, it's like the impact is not only can you show up, is can we see everyday people, moms, grandmas,
Mhm,
students come in, find their voice, and really advocate for the issues that are really impacting them in their communities. And we've seen it happen. And we just
mm,
want to invite many people. I grew up in the church. I'm like, the doors are open. Will you come?
right.
Right? We invite people to come in and be a part of the change that they want to see.
That is awesome. Well, congratulations on that. That definitely helped a lot of families. Like you said, it gave them time to figure things out, especially this time of um, limited affordable housing. So it's hard to make that transition. These are all great examples you all shared. I hope our audience is taking really great notes. Um, so we're down to the closing reflection that we'd like to offer to our audience from each of you. If you could share one sentence, what is one concrete action organizations can take in the next 30 days to strengthen civic engagement in nonpartisan and sustainable in a nonpartisan and sustainable way? What is the one kind of like easy next step organizations or companies can take? Sandra, maybe I'll start with you.
Sure. Engage your elected officials. They should know who you are. You should know who they are. You should know how they're voting on the issues. And so I would say just get to know specifically the district in which your organization is headquartered. Know who those elected officials are and how they're voting on the issues that impact the communities that you're serving. And so vote 411.
Perfect. Know who
Shout out
your
to
elected
the League of
officials
Women
are.
Voters.
Mm.
Shout out to the League of Women Voters. Vote 411. You can find all your elected officials there.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for that resource. League of Women Voters. All right. Amari.
I'm definitely going to piggyback off the engagement part, but I think providing continuous, accurate information through different
Mm-hmm.
methods, because with employees, they're looking at, especially in construction, they have tight timelines, they're dealing with multiple personalities, they're trying to deliver projects, and they have a whole lot of emails. So sending out
Mm.
one email or posting one message isn't going to do. But if you continuously send out an email with, we're Tri-County, right? Our employees are Tri-County, possibly even more if someone comes down from like Port St. Lucie, right? So making sure that they understand
Mm-hmm.
their timelines to them specifically. And I did that last year. The last election. I created just a quick info sheet where, hey, if you're
Okay.
Miami-Dade, these are your races. If you live in these areas, this is where you got. These are your registration deadlines. And then eventually we had a quarterly staff meeting where once again they gave me a whole 2 slides, and I was able to talk to the entire staff and say, hey, once again, you might have not missed that email that you claim you didn't see, but you did. Um, but
Mm-hmm.
this is the information I think. So I think for us, making sure that people stay informed, but you have to use different
Right.
methods to do that is going to be the one thing that they have to do.
Mhm. Excellent. Excellent. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
A one page informational can go a long way, right? And continuous, consistent communication. Excellent. And Shirley, we'll close out with you. Your one quick tip on how to activate civic engagement
If you don't
next 30
already have it, create a
days.
community resource hub, one place where everyone can go for everything, and then create a one-liner for your leaders, supervisors, and managers that have access to the employees, that when they huddle in the morning or they huddle when they leave for the day, etc., from those tight timelines, that every day they
Mm,
remind them that the community resource hub exists and what's inside that community resource hub. Make it easy for them to be able to share the
okay.
information.
Excellent. Make it easy. Yes, yes. Make it easy. If it's easy, and you all are leaders by example in your company, so um, I think you are making it easy because they're seeing that you're doing it and it's important to you, and so they're following your lead. So thank you for your leadership and civic engagement. Thank you, panelists, for your thoughtful discussions today. We've definitely heard some very practical ways that our audience can engage and build trust and make measurable impact around civic engagement. So I encourage everyone to take at least one of the ideas from this conversation back to your teams and start putting it into action. The Urban League is an action-oriented organization. Anything they do is all about action, next steps. So this is not information for information's sake. In community civic impact is not just a strategy, it's a shared responsibility, and it strengthens both organizations and the community. So thank you all. And please visit the Mobilizing the Movement web page at ulbroward.org/MTM. Thank you, panelists. Enjoyed speaking with you this morning.
Good afternoon. My name is Alika Brown, and I serve as Senior Vice President of Philanthropy and Communications for the Urban League of Broward County. As we close today's conference, I want to begin with two simple words: thank you. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for engaging thoughtfully. And thank you for investing your time, energy, and voice in this important conversation. Producing a conference like this is about far more than filling an agenda or even convening a room. For us, it's about creating space, a space to learn, a space to challenge assumptions, a space to build relationships, and a space to imagine what is possible when communities are informed, engaged, and empowered. And today, you did exactly that. When we envisioned mobilizing the movement, our goal was never just to host another conference or another event. Our goal was truly to spark a movement, because democracy is not self-sustaining, and healthy communities do not happen just by accident. We know that equitable outcomes are not inevitable. They require participation, they require leadership, and they require all of us. Throughout today's sessions, we heard powerful insights from experts, practitioners, advocates, and community leaders who reminded us that civic engagement extends far beyond Election Day. It lives in our workplaces, our neighborhoods, our schools, our faith communities, our businesses, and of course, in our homes. We explored how organizations can foster civic participation in their respective companies, and how companies can help to build trust, and communities can build trust, and how each of us can help to shape the systems that affect our daily lives. So for communities that have historically been underserved, marginalized, or excluded from the decision-making process, this work carries even greater significance because representation matters, access matters, and voices matter. When people are equipped with information, opportunity, and pathways to participation, communities become stronger and even more resilient. Today's conversations reaffirmed an important truth. Every person deserves not only a seat at the table, but a meaningful opportunity to shape the decisions that affect their lives each and every day. And that is the work before us, and the work that requires persistence. Movements are not built in a day, and we also know that trust is not built overnight. And change rarely happens in straight lines. But as history teaches us, progress is possible when communities organize, advocate, and act together. So please join me in giving another round of applause, virtual round of applause, if you will, to our amazing slate of speakers today. We also extend our gratitude to the Broward Supervisor of Elections Office for helping to ensure that our community has access to accurate information and resources needed to ensure that their voices are heard. We believe that an informed electorate is fundamental to a healthy democracy, and we are so grateful for these partnerships. So we extend our heartfelt appreciation to the Ventus Charitable Foundation for supporting this conference and for recognizing the importance of creating spaces where residents can learn, connect, and lead in their own right. We are equally grateful to our long-term partner, Becker, and community advocate. Your commitment, Becker, to public engagement and to community advancement really strengthens our work and helps to demonstrate what is possible when philanthropy, business, and community organizations work together in service for public good. Finally, thank you to each attendee in this virtual room, because conferences do not create change, people do. The real work will begin once you leave here today. And so it begins in the conversations you're having each and every day with colleagues, in the organizations that you lead, in the meetings that you attend, in the young people that you mentor, the policies you advocate for, and the elections in which you participate. My hope is that you leave here not only informed, but inspired. And not only inspired, but activated. Not only activated, but truly, truly ready and committed to cultivating a culture of civic impact in every space you occupy. So before we depart, I want to extend one final invitation for you to join us here at the Urban League of Broward County tomorrow, Wednesday, June 17th at 6:30 p.m. for our Congressional District 20 Candidate Forum. This is an opportunity to hear directly from the candidates seeking to represent our community locally as well as in Washington. We know that an informed electorate strengthens democracy, and we encourage residents to attend, show up, listen, and engage thoughtfully in the democratic process. And as we close, I'll leave you with this final thought. Movement begins with people. They grow through relationships, and they endure through action. They only succeed when our communities believe in the collective power to shape the future. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your leadership, and thank you for your commitment to our community. Together, let's continue to mobilize the movement. Have a wonderful rest of your week, and we look forward to seeing you at our candidate forum tomorrow evening. Thank you.